I saw something on the telly about mental health or something like that. And the whole premise was men need to talk more. You need to open up. You need to be cool. You need to become more like women. If only men were like women, they wouldn't kill themselves. That's, why is suicide seen as like a personal kind of? If only they said something. Or why don't people look instead of looking at GDP? Why not look at suicide rates as the sign of why your society is going? And there are kind of undeniable signs that we're in a decline. Life expectancy has been going down for about what 5+ years now. So that's what people always used to say. You're so lucky that by the time you're old, people will live to 100. When you're older, that will be normal, but it's going the other way now. And it's mainly due to drug deaths and suicides. So these you know, concrete data is just you can't pretend that we're not in a decline, and that's not really an immigration thing because if you look at country like South Korea has high suicide rates, and a country like Japan they have many of the same problems we have in the West. So there's maybe a problem that people just everything is about immigration, and if it wasn't for immigration, then everything would be fine. That's kind of the main critique of the 1950s. Let's just go back to 1950 when everything was great. Well, as if without immigration, everyone would be absolutely over the moon. I don't know, but our problems aren't seen as a reason to just reject the system. It's because we haven't embraced the system enough. Well, I guess people don't like to think about it, do they? But young, working class white boys are some of the people that do the worst at school. And they are the group that does the worst at school. So all the people that talk about race and IQ, or whites are so. If IQ is the argument to save the white race, then how can you explain that working class white kids are the kids do the worst at school? The mainstream kind of thing is, there isn't really that much interest, is there, at all in white kids, but no one is really. No one says that the education system is just completely screwed. It's more, we need to invest more. Let's invest in the NHS. Well, maybe we should fundamentally change the way it's set up. And there's that. A lot of people with Brexit, one of the arguments that is for Brexit is that people won't be able to blame the European Union. So that's a good thing. But if that's your argument for Brexit, then you should probably vote for Jeremy Corbyn, or you should have at the previous election. Because the mainstream, if there's a problem, they'll just say conservative austerity. They won't say go outside of that. But obviously, if Corbyn was in charge, they wouldn't be able to say that. It's almost like we have to eliminate all of the main talking points until people cannot not acknowledge what is. People will take the easy option, won't they? They'll take the easy solution, the easy explanation, but we haven't even tried that. So maybe as things get worse, 5 years from now, who knows how bad things will be? Things get worse exponentially. So 5 years from now, how could we? And then in 5 years from now, people in the next election will still be saying it's austerity. That would be the main explanation, not anything more holistic, not anything more. I don't know. People on the left will probably just blame Brexit and austerity. That's been the when you walk around, you see posters. What was it? Blame austerity, not immigrants. That's the don't blame migrants, blame austerity. Without that poster will still be up 5 years from now. I don't know, but hopefully the Labour Party has been destroyed, and the fact that the working classes have given up on Labour, I don't think they're going to go back, are they? Because Labour aren't going to go back to the Michael Foot Labour. It's once they've committed to this global homo, and they aren't going to turn back. No one is. They can't turn back. If you turn back, they'll be kicked out. They'll be called racist. So there's no way once the working class have left, they're ever going to come back. So what will a party for the working class be? Because you can't say that Boris Johnson represents the working class. So maybe in that window you could point to something, but it would be good if people just started thinking in a more holistic fashion about suicide isn't solved by people opening up more or talking more, because if suicide is going up and men have been kind of closed off and kept things to themselves historically, then how can opening up more be a valid explanation as to how to solve suicide? It is not a variable, is it? So it can't be the reason. But the reason for suicide, in it, if you want to look into it, you're going to have to talk about death of God or capitalism, or talk about things that aren't. It involves some kind of stepping back and some thought about things. You can't just. People are too wired in. People are too attached to the technology. If people don't ever step back, then they can't look at the whole picture. You can't see the forest, or you can't see the trees when you're in the forest, or whatever the expression is. I don't know, but there's so many just pathetic little endeavours that I'm like, let's get Britain talking, because that's the solution to suicide. Or some solutions are just clearly obvious. I mean, if you're in America, why don't you just get rid of the Sackler family? That's a really straightforward, nothing ideological, nothing. But even that is too much thought for a lot of people. So just let's talk more is easier. And if people came to the conclusion that the Sackler family is a source of some of their problems, they would have to do something. As soon as people see the establishment as the problem, immediately they know that that entails that they have to do something. And I think immediately that's daunting to people. They think, well, there's no chance I can beat this massive establishment. And people want to get on, don't they? People want to be liked. So nowadays, being liked, it's just not being controversial. Or you watch news, and when there's a bit about at the Oscars, there aren't enough black people. They just go, oh, just ignore that. Just watch the rest. That's not important. Don't focus on that bit. Not realizing that that bit is that's the system's narrative. That's the narrative of liberalism. That is what that is the reflection of what of where we're going. But people ignore it and ignore it until they can't ignore it. By which point it might be too late. Jonathan Jonathan Bowden in 2010 said, "What we have 20 years, or do you say 10 years ago? What 20 years or?" But I think we've reached a point where liberalism we can't we can't it will have an impact. It will have left its mark on the white race. There's no way around that. If 50 years ago people did something and stood up and but it's gone too long now for us to simply let's just elect a load of Salvinis and everything will be fine. The problem is it's so deep rooted that whatever happens, even if we win, and I think we will, because I don't believe we'll just fade away and accept getting replaced. But when we win, it will be at a price. Whether that's there'll just be a lot less white people, which is already happening. Whether our percentage of the world population will go below 5%, whether we'll have to have like England and France and Poland and just say we're all just Europeans and we have to band together and look out for each other because people see us or the establishment of you know who see us as the enemy. So if they see us as the enemy, then we kind of have to band together. I don't know. How do we make sure that if we win, we don't end up here again? How do we make sure that this never happens again? I don't know. I guess that's impossible. But I mean, there is a chance that 500 years from now, which isn't that long, or even 300 years maybe, there'll be no more white people. Just none. There's not because the white person has a kid. If a white person, sorry, has a kid with an Asian person, the kid isn't white. Any other race, basically, unless unless the person is yeah, you can only if a white person has a kid with anyone apart from a white person, maybe like someone who's a bit mixed race is okay. But if there's some kind of conflicts and it's not difficult to foresee a time when there's no more white people. And you think about world history, imagine what the world would be like without white people. And the whole what will the driving forces of the world be? I don't know. Maybe there'll be a nuclear holocaust, or the world will explode, or there'll be some kind of other. Not as if the only threat to the white race is liberalism. We still have we still have the same problems that our ancestors had to a certain extent. I don't know. The next the next 10 years, this time, in 10 years' time, it will be impossible for people not to acknowledge that something's going on or that something has gone wrong. I think people would have accepted that we're living in a dark age, basically. I don't think there'll be any way that anyone can be particularly optimistic. And then you look at the nature of a liberal person who's so just naively just optimistic and just will so shallow. How can they digest the fact that they're living in a dark period? How can people who have no notion of suffering, who see life as just a personal voyage, how can they then accept that maybe it'd be better if you weren't born? You know, that life is more down than up. I think it's really important that there's some kind of cultural figure who goes mainstream and can put some ideas out there that aren't necessarily alt-right, but can help people accept the nature of life. Because someone with a liberal ethos will not manage in the world to come.